right, everyone, welcome to Miles and Mindset Tour de France Femmes edition. This is episode 5, stage 5, with me, Rebecca Rusch, and Brent Bookwalter, both former professional athletes, and Brent in cycling, me in cycling, but also a bunch of other sports. And this is not a breakdown of the Tour de France Femmes race. It's actually a breakdown of the psychology of what the athletes and teams are going through in one of the hardest, most amazing, most elite sporting events in the world. And we are not pre-planning the topics that we're going to talk about. We're actually watching the stages every day like you are, and sort of tapping into our team on the ground and really kind of looking at what are the mindset tools, the training, the strategies that these athletes are using to perform at their best day after day after day. And Brent and I, we are part of the performance team with Dr. Alan Lim and Caroline Resin, an athlete who is racing her very first Tour de France Femme as part of the team, Saint-Michel, Preference Home, Auberville 93. And so we're in touch with them on the ground, everything from the chefs to the performance team to Caroline herself, who Brent is advising in sports psychology. And so it's been really fun to follow along with the race. One, in the sort of public information that's put out there, but also the behind the scenes of what everyone's going through. So this is stage 5. Stage 4, the time trial, we actually had to practice some of our own mindset tools because we recorded a great episode that we'll have to re-record because technology failed us. And so we took some deep breaths. We said, okay, we're moving on to the next stage. Yesterday was a bit of a fail for us, but just like these athletes, we're moving forward. And today's stage, oh man, I thought it was so exciting. You look at the profile, really intense. They've already been racing for 4 days. This is stage 5. A lot of climbs, 8 categorized climbs. And right from the get-go, you saw these teams were aggressive. People were positioning. You could tell nobody was going to sit around and wait for anything. And so there were a lot of fireworks. It was absolutely fantastic. But I just kept thinking like, wow, this looks really hard. And so, Brent, from your perspective, you've raced the Tour de France, you've done stage racing like this. What are you thinking coming into stage 5 that is going on in the minds of these athletes and these teams as they're looking at the profile, they're in today's stage? What are they going through?
Yeah, Rebecca, I think stage 5 in any race, that's long enough now where the harsh reality of stage racing fatigue, the accumulation of just the energy, not just physical, but mental too, that's been spent not just in the first 4 days of the race, but also in the lead up, all the training camps, all that, coming to the fore now. And the word that kind of comes to my mind right away is motivation. I think it's really, expected, quite easy to be motivated at the start of the Grand Depart. It's such an honor to race the Tour de France, and the emotions are high, the excitement's high at the beginning of the race, but 1, 2, 3, 4 days in, it's a lot harder to get motivated. Every one little step you go up outside of the race, or even the steps into the bus, you just feel the legs and the body getting kind of crunchy and tired down. It's been a lot of days in the heat as well. So it's hard to rally, and it's hard to really get motivated and to believe. For the riders at the front of the race, it's a lot different than the riders at the back. The riders, Demi Vollering, Kasia Niewedama, Marlen Reusser, they're motivated to go win this race. And that is something that they can be very proud for, working with their team. But what a tale of two races for all the riders that are also fighting just to survive, to make time cut. And there were a lot of them today that were dropped in distance on that first climb and had a long, hard day. And it's challenging in those gruppettos and those drop groups to maintain that motivation and that fire when you still have 4 days to go after today.
Yeah, and I was thinking about as you were talking about some of the motivation, one of the tools I've relied on when you're doing something that is so long, 9-day stage race, or even today's race in itself is such a long stage with so much climbing. And there's a phrase is like, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
Here we go.
Really about like, okay, just get over this climb. Okay, just get over the next climb. Okay, just get through this stage. And even Allison Jackson from Saint Michel Preference Home Oberville 93, she was one of the last official riders to make the time cut. And I'm sure she wasn't super stoked with that performance. I haven't talked to her, but she was right on the cutoff. But I saw an interview with her at the end and she's like, yep, we do this so we can do it another day again tomorrow. And I was really impressed with her attitude of like finishing at the back of the pack, but being like, yeah, I get to do this again tomorrow. And she was just doing that at a post-race interview exactly. She wasn't making that up. She wasn't saying it. You could tell it was coming from her heart of like, yep, we'll race again tomorrow. So I was really thinking about in motivation of like breaking things down into bite-sized chunks. And, was that a strategy that you employ or does that work? Or did I just make that my own?
No, I mean, and as small of a chunk as you need, there were a lot of stages in my Tour de France career, especially looking at these sort of medium mountain days with 5 to 10 kilometer length climbs. I would argue that they're actually harder to survive and to get through for the riders who are not at the pointy end. If you're a rider who's looking to get through today, or if you don't make the breakaway, like was your objective, these stages are even harder to get through. And I would draw numerous finish lines for myself throughout a stage like this. You said 8 categorized climbs, more climbs that are not categorized. And I would have probably at the start of the race, my first finish line would be 12K in the top of that first climb. And I would have totally removed, reality of those following 100 and however many kilometers after that first climb as much as possible. And it's all in, all for focus just to get to the top of that climb. And then we reset from there, do the descent. Maybe eventually things kind of settle in. We get in a good group and the chunks become a little bigger, like going to a feed zone. But then when it gets really tough again on one of the later climbs, we're talking to the next road sign, kilometer by kilometer. It's one of the reasons I still like using the metric system, to be honest, in kilometers in terms of running or riding, is because it's smaller. It's also built down in these nice multiples of 10. And when things get really rough, I can do 100 meters. I can look up and see 100 meters, 10 of those equal 1 kilometer, 5 of those equal one of these climbs. And as small as you need to break it down in terms of aiming that attention and focusing on those small chunks.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you said that. When I raced when I was adventure racing, I raced with a bunch of Aussies and they would say the same. They're just like, I hate races that are in miles because it's so demoralizing mentally because it takes so much longer to check off 1 mile versus 1 kilometer. You mentioned the word, I just keep coming back to the word roller coaster, and something that someone said to me as we're thinking about motivation, when I was first starting getting involved with adventure racing, those are like week-long races nonstop, ultra endurance. You're going through the night, but a very similar mindset to these kind of really long stage races. And she said something to me, a mentor and experienced person. She's like, at the start of my first eco challenge, she's like, no matter how good or bad you feel, it won't last. And I have remembered that for decades. One, for when I'm on a high and I'm like, I could do this forever. I'm like, nope,
Won't last.
Eat and drink, take care of myself, because endurance sports are such a roller coaster, and you'll be in a trough, you'll be on a high. And that was the one word. We didn't get much info from the team, but we got one word, which was roller coaster. And so how do you mentally, when you are in one of those troughs, how do you sort of dig yourself out? You're in the middle of the stage, you're maybe on the 5th climb of 8. How do you dig out of one of those roller coaster troughs mentally? What are some tools that you've used?
For me, just going back to like the really basic and most immediate needs. And in any given moment of a bike race, that is obviously fueling, hydration. We talk a lot about, I think, even more now than the period of my career when I was racing the Tour de France, the nutrition really coming up a big level. And it's also fueling performances that were, unprecedented not too long ago. So in terms of meeting our basic needs first before we can really thrive and flourish and be optimized and actualized to the best optimized versions of ourselves, is just coming down to the basics of like, what do I have at my disposal right here, right now, that satisfies a basic need? So maybe it's eating, maybe it's drinking, maybe it's some relatability. Maybe it's finding a teammate, a partner, a country person in that group you're in to just like share a little bit of oh, how hard is this? Share a little bit in that suffering. The relatability is really powerful, and that's a basic need. As you know, as humans, we need to feel like we belong, have to have a sense of purpose, and I think on that line, also reaffirming and reestablishing why I am actually here. Not that it's time to re-engineer and get philosophical about meaning of life and if we're going to do this a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, but yeah, also giving ourselves some credit for like, what are we doing here? Well, I'm in the biggest bike race in the world and I came here to give everything of myself, and that's also a metric of success. So I still am in with a chance to getting to the next stage, pouring out everything, and then like Allison so nicely said, we get to do it again tomorrow. And that really, the opportunity mindset and motivation versus the pressure, the expectation, and the fear orientation of mindset and motivation.
Yeah, I mean, you said a couple of things I want to pull on in there. Misery does love company, and even just you saw it a lot at the finish line. You see it during the race when they show the middle and the back of the pack. Are these people really are working together, even from different teams? And you saw it at the front of the pack when the top three went away over the top. The three of them by themselves and had dropped the rest of the field. You know, Demi Vollering and Kashaniwa Domafini and Marlen Reusser, they were working together to get themselves to the finish. And so it is, you know, obviously they wanted to beat each other, but they were real clear that like, hey, we're in this together. And so it's one, you saw these beautiful hugs and teammates. And, you know, the first thing Demi said at the finish was like, think into her radio, thank you, team. Thank you, team. Because it may be your team or it may be somebody else that's just riding up that hill with you where you can like have a look over there and just be like, oof, you know.
Yes, the shared experience.
Yeah. Yeah, the shared experience is huge. And then you also talked about a really important part about motivation. I mean, motivation is this holy grail that people think just is there. Either you're a motivated person or you're not a motivated person. And it's really not like that. Motivation is also a roller coaster, just like the course profile. And always going back to your foundational why of what's important to you, of I'm in the biggest bike race. I worked all year to get here. I want to finish this. I know with the San Michel team, like, and Caroline specifically, she has a goal to finish and get through all these stages. I'm interested because Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, who had came in with one of her big whys was to defend her jersey from last year, her win from last year. And she lost time in the TT. And then today she lost a lot of time, more time. And she's nearly 5 minutes back now off the GC. And the first interview she did, they said, you know, are your GT, you know, goals gone? And she said, if I'm being honest, probably yes. And then the very next thing she said is, we'll meet with the team, we'll remake a plan, we will, you know, again, move on to the next day. But so how does somebody who her why really was to come very clearly, and her team why to defend her win from last year? So how do you reshift when your why is kind of like pulled out from under you, the carpet is gone? And she said, I'm riding well, I felt good, my power numbers were good, we'll make another plan. So I
Yeah,
was actually really impressed with immediately right at the finish, that was her immediate mindset, whereas I
yeah,
would have expected sort of remorse, more like, oh, my plans are smashed, but she didn't present in that way, and I was really
yeah.
impressed. So what do you in that?
Well, I think Pauline's resume and history speaks for itself, and that she's been around the block and she's kind of done it all. She's won, you know, pretty much everything everywhere across disciplines. So I suspect she has a lot of clarity on where this disappointment fits into her life and career in the big scheme of things. I think that why and that mission to defend the title of the Tour de France, that's powerful and it's very important. But let's be honest, it also is external and it's extrinsic, and there's a lot in there that she can't control. She can control the things that she said, like the form she comes in with, how she executes on the day, how she gets the most out of herself on any given day, and that potential she has on the day. But past that, she can't control what her competitors do, the level they are at. So when we're forced to let go of the external and the extrinsic motivation, that's a time to turn it inside, and it's deep internal, deep intrinsic. Why am I here? What am I doing? And when we're talking intrinsic motivation, I think you go immediately to those three facets of self-determination theory, which is autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And we can sort of pick those apart and even use those as a framework to take the next steps when we realize like, this external goal or feedback or result that was really important. It did mean something to me, and I'm kind of lost of where to go. Well, let's look at how I can recultivate my internal intrinsic motivation, and let's figure out some ways that I can display and have and lean into some autonomy, find some areas where I can still be competent and capable, and definitely relatable. You know, the disappointment is shared amongst your whole team, and not no one, her or any teammate carries that alone. That's shared. And I think uniting with that relatability is a part of also coming back and getting going the next day.
Yeah, I mean, we know about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, internal and external values, goals. You know, clearly that was an external reward they were going for as far as the overall win, but that's not her only why, is to win the Tour de France. And for any of these athletes to win a stage and they come short, they've also for sure got intrinsic motivation. And whether it's to feel proud, whether it's to be part of a team, whether I know with Saint Michel, they have a tagline. They're the cycling team with big dreams, and they are all about inspiring young people. And this team in particular, it's from one of the poorest regions of Paris. This really old cycling club, and so there are plenty of intrinsic goals. Even signing a jersey for a young rider, or throwing your flowers to somebody young, a young kid who's looking up to you. So all of these athletes who are there on that stage, they're having a ton of impact that they might not even know about yet. But I know that they feel it, that they feel like they are inspiring the next generation. They're inspiring us. I was inspired on my bike today. Like I got
You're the
on the
trainer.
indoor trainer with I never do. I hate the indoor trainer, but I was like, I want to ride and I want to watch this stage. So that was my why, is like, I want my own exercise and watch the stage. And so I did them together, and I was just riding super hard. My power numbers are like going up as the race was going on. And so these women out there, like, they are so inspiring to me and the rest of the world. And I know that many of them feel that as an intrinsic motivation. And Pauline, for example, she's like, yeah, I want to finish this proud. I didn't get my primary goal, or I might not get my primary goal, but there's other motivations, there's other whys. Like none of us go with only one why. And to your point, when one of the external one goes away, you dig deeper and you find some of the other more intrinsic motivation, and you start to pull on those, and those suddenly come to the surface as your primary goal.
Yes, and I think the same can be said for these riders, like you said, that are maybe realizing they're in the deep end and they're not fighting for the win up there at the front of the peloton. I think the same goes for that and the reset. No matter where you are in this peloton, there's very few riders in this race that are finishing today and not feeling like they, kind of took one on the chin and are really going to have to, reset, refocus, and give it a go tomorrow. And more, just another really challenging day tomorrow to come again. So not much time to turn around.
Yeah. And so as we wrap this up, and the takeaways for all of us all of you is to think about, what is your motivational menu, as I like to call it, and what are those intrinsic and extrinsic motivators for you? And if you can identify that whole list of things, you can grow that list of your motivational menu. Then all of a sudden, when one gets pulled away, you draw on another one, and they're more on the surface. So if that's a takeaway exercise for all of you, is to think about why do you get on your bike? Why are you here? And really building an awareness of your own motivation and what motivates you. And for sure, a race and external motivation is very powerful, but it's not the only thing that we have to draw on. So that would be my homework for all of you, is to like think about what does motivate you and what are those things, and be able to draw on them a little more easily, a little more at the surface in your next challenge.
I like the menu. Yeah, motivational menu. Create it. A la carte. Yep. Or full course.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. We're going to wrap this Miles and Mindset episode. We will be back with you for the next stage. For all of you listening, thank you for being here. This is a really fun project. Brent, I'm loving doing this with you. I'm loving getting into the mindset of the race. Of course, I'm watching the race and it's exciting, but I really love picking apart and thinking about what these athletes are doing and thinking and these teams are doing. So it's a fun project for us too. It's like our own race within the race, definitely. But yeah, thanks, Brent, for doing this with me. And for all of you, drop some comments in YouTube. Let us know what you want to hear, how this is going for you, and we will see you on the next stage.